So this is great news for the sickle cell community. But I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret when it comes to this type of news for the sickle cell community. A lot of people that are living with sickle cell disease or have a friend, a family member in this community, when they see this type of news, they are frustrated, exhausted, and tired from this type of news. Not because the news doesn't matter, it is super important, but it is simply because when we see this type of news, the buzz comes around, everybody gets excited, and the news starts fizzling down, and that pretty much is it. There is no action behind it once it's all gone. So the biggest question that I'm asking today is, so what? Now what? Then what? Because that is what the sickle cell community needs from all of us when we see this type of news. So I'm going to give you guys an analogy, and I want you guys to tell me what you think about this. So I have a friend, her name is Maribel, and when she saw this news, she shared it with me. Super excited, super motivated, super hopeful. But what I also know about Maribel is she has always supported my sickle cell work, both in Africa, here in the US. She has always supported this work. And then I have another friend. They saw this news, they forwarded it to me. Didn't even say hi or hello, just forwarded the news to me. So I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure most of us would rather appreciate someone like a Maribel sharing this news with us. And that is the reality and the humble ask that I think this community needs from all of us. See, for me, as a voice, as a leader in this community, I feel so compelled to talk about this because I feel like I'll be doing this community a disservice if our world isn't informed about this unfortunate reality that we all know. I am super, super happy for Daniel and so many other people that are getting these new treatment options. The reality of the matter is that most of the people most impacted by sickle cell, let's face it, sickle cell, majority of the people impacted by sickle cell are in Africa, Nigeria, different countries, India, around the world. Most of the people most impacted by sickle cell will likely never ever have access to this type of treatment. Does that stop the work we do in sickle cell? Absolutely not. So the thing and the ask from this community is, what else can we do to put some action behind this news? See, I've always said this: intention and impact are two different things. And if we want to make our intention more impactful, we have to put some action behind it. See, I read about this and I'll share my article later. But I saw another post from another good friend of mine on LinkedIn, and he shared a similar sentiment. He's like, we are tired, we are frustrated, we are exhausted. A lot of the people in the sickle cell community, they were part of these clinical trials that helped led to these approvals. They are well entrenched and deeply know this information. They still will appreciate the information, but I think what they will appreciate more is if we put some action behind just sharing the news. And so, what can we do? What can we do to create some tangible action when we see this news? Great, please share the news with people. Some people are excited about it. It helps bring more awareness to sickle. So when people share this stuff with me, it makes me excited because it makes me realize that people are learning and knowing about sickle cell. The things that we can do when it comes to sickle cell and this type of news is donate blood if you can and are able to. A lot of people with sickle cell, that is literally the only life-saving treatment they still have till today. That's it. Some people, they don't even have access to standard of care like hydroxyurea for some people, some folic acid, some of the basic standard treatments. Some of these people with sickle cell, they don't even have it. And blood transfusions is literally the only saving grace. So for those of us that can and are able to, donate blood when you can. Volunteer for a sickle cell organization. Money, time, resources, energy. And I know for some of us who may not have the ability to do any of these things. And so what I always start by saying is, if you want to do something for sickle cell, you can always start with yourself. And what I mean by that is know and learn about your genotype. It doesn't matter too, whether you're black, blue, purple, pink, white, you name it. Every single human being needs to know about their genotype because sickle cell impacts everybody. And we know, we try to educate and tell people know your genotype because it can impact our family planning decisions. But even beyond that, the thing I always like to talk about, I've done extensive research in this part of my work in sickle cell, is the fact that for people with sickle cell trait, under certain very extreme conditions, they can experience some rare complications. Again, these things are rare, but rare doesn't mean it cannot occur. One I like to always remind people is there's a rare form of kidney cancer called renal medullary carcinoma. This cancer almost always only affects people who have sickle cell trait, usually of Black or African descent. Again, very rare. When this cancer happens, it is super aggressive. Most people unfortunately pass away from it. We just saw some recent news from a recent conference. One of my good friends here in Texas who's doing some great work for some hope for RMC. Well, RMC is one of those rare things that people with sickle cell trait can get. Again, very rare. Most people with sickle cell trait do just fine. You guys can look up the story about Ryan Clark playing in high altitude and what that happened there. These are all rare, but rare doesn't mean it cannot happen. So whenever I think about sickle cell, what we can do for sickle cell, I always say, let's start with ourselves. If you don't know your genotype, know and learn about your genotype. You're probably going to be fine for the rest of your life. But I always say rare doesn't mean it cannot occur. Let's talk about other things we can also do for the people living and battling this condition. For those of us that are fortunate enough that don't have to live with the pain, the infection, the strokes, all these challenges that these people didn't ask for that they go through, I think one thing that we can do again is do something tangible for them. See, most people don't even know this about Daniel. See, Daniel has a nonprofit. He does have a nonprofit, and his nonprofit is called Privileged Pilots Project. See, when he talked about this news of his recent treatment and cure, on the stage, he talked about how one of the biggest reasons and inspirations behind his nonprofit is because he wants to make sure other people don't go through the same pain, hopelessness, uncertainty, challenges that he goes through. So at one point, he got denied access to his pilot license. It's one of the inspirations that helped him go through this new treatment, and now he can have his license. Him and his co-founder both have sickle cell, went through the similar treatment, and now they get to give back to the sickle cell community. And so for me, beyond maybe sharing the exciting news, which again is important, we could support his nonprofit, or we could choose another nonprofit to support. These are some of the tangible things that we can all do to put some action behind these news that we share. So again, I want to caveat and say the news is great. It is awesome. It is good for the sickle cell community. We still have a long way to go, but this shows progress. When we see this news and all we're doing is just sharing it, tagging people in the sickle cell community, and leaving it at that, my question to all of us is, so what? Now what? Then what? That is what my brain went to. I saw this a couple of weeks ago. A couple of days ago. Brought me back to the same thing. Like I said, I've written about this several times because we see this news happen often and often, which is good, but it will always fizzle down and we forget about it. And so, if you are not, in my opinion, if you are not a news reporter or a news channel, please, please, when you share this stuff, ask yourself, what else could you do for sickle cell? It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, because all of us are impacted by sickle cell, and there's something we all can do for sickle cell. Even if you cannot do something directly for people living with sickle cell. Look, I tell my team all the time, whether it's my work, my foundation, no one behind foundation or sickle cell 101, I tell everybody, we're not trying to solve all the problems of the world for sickle cell. We all can't do it. Nobody can do that. We're all trying to do our part. And I think we all can do one thing to be a part of creating tangible, actionable solutions for sickle cell. And so that is why I feel compelled to talk about this, because I'm telling you guys, if you know anybody who has sickle cell, anybody in the sickle cell community, they are going to tell you what I'm telling you today. And they will tell you they will appreciate more if they know the person sharing this news with them is also someone who puts some action behind the news they're sharing. As always, be human. Don't forget to be kind. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you. Again, happy for Daniel. Happy for the people going through these treatments. But let's not forget, there is a ton of people living with sickle cell disease, battling sickle cell disease. Some who've gone through clinical trials. Some that we've lost, that may never have access to these treatments. And so while we are celebrating, the question we all can ask ourselves is, so what? Now what? Then what? Thank you guys. If I haven't already said it, as always, be human. Don't forget to be kind. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. If you want to learn more about sickle cell, you can check out Sickle Cell 101 or my nonprofit, which is called No One Behind Foundation, NOB Foundation, and so many other nonprofits doing great work and support all these nonprofits, including Privileged Pilots by Daniel. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.